My name is Wes Orloff, and in 2012 and 2013, I raced a motorcycle at the Pikes Peak International Hill Climb. So 2012 was our first year, and Pikes Peak had always been a bucket list item for me. Back in the 90s, I was working at Cummins Engine Company. We actually sponsored, believe it or not, a semi-truck that raced up Pikes Peak. So I was out there a couple years with that effort, and when I was out there, I saw these guys had bikes out there too, and at the time it was still all dirt. And I go, wow, that's really cool that motorcycles are running out here. It kind of planted the seed, but I really don't have a lot of dirt experience with a motorcycle. And over the years, that Pikes Peak got paved more and more each year. So it's a 12-mile course. Like the first year, they only paved a mile. Then a couple years later, there was 3 miles paved, and so on and so forth. In 2011, there was only a mile of dirt left. And we knew the next year it was going to be all fresh pavement. So I said, if I'm ever going to do it, this would probably be a good year to try it. So it was a real bucket list item for me, and we put together a program using a Harley Davidson XR 1200 set up for road racing, and we went out there. And I'm kind of used to, local racing on motorcycles and CCS, ASRA. So this was an international event, and it had a whole different feel to it. We had to go out a couple weeks in advance. You practice all throughout the week. You're getting up at 2, 3 a.m. in the morning, going up to the mountain. Just some incredible memories there. Like going up the road to Pikes Peak at 3 o'clock in the morning with a full moon is just something that I'll never forget. So we would get up there, it'd only be 30 degrees, and we would practice. We'd do a third of a section at a time. So during practice at Pikes Peak, you never do the full course. You're only doing sections. I was taking it real seriously. I was just reviewing video for hours every night, try to memorize the course, which is a huge task. And to be able to go fast at Pikes Peak, you absolutely have to know where you are, because you'll come around a blind corner and it may open up or it may tighten up, and then there's a 800-foot cliff on one side with no guardrail. So memorizing the course was absolutely critical. So I watched as much video as I could prior to that. I was playing video games at Pikes Peak, trying to memorize the course. And even to this day, almost 10 years later, I still remember a lot of that course and a lot of the corners and stuff, which is kind of fun. Race day at Pikes Peak is unlike any other motorcycle road race either, because there's no practice prior to it. I mean, you literally get on the bike, go to the starting line, they wave the flag, and you go. So that's the first time you've been on the bike that day, essentially. So your first corner is 80 feet away, and you have to be in race mode immediately. And the track is cold, the road is cold. The road is getting colder the higher up you go. We started fairly early in the morning, so the bike is moving around. It's really not super confidence inspiring. And the need to be inch perfect everywhere you go on Pikes Peak, so you don't go off that cliff or you don't hit that boulder. It's just it's a lot of pressure. It was something that I underestimated, when I first signed up to go to Pikes Peak. So race day came, and on the lower third of the section, it's kind of through the woods. It's actually a really fun section. It's very fast, and the XR was working really well. And I was coming up towards the end of the third section, and there was a corner there called Engineer's Corner, which is ironic because my day job is an engineer. Started coming up through it, and I got in there a little bit hot, and I started trail braking the motorcycle to get the bike turned. And as I crossed the crown of the road, it had a paint stripe there. It's a public road, 99% of the time. And as soon as that front tire touched that paint line, it just folded on me. And I got tangled up with the bike and crashed pretty hard. Luckily, there weren't any big rocks or cliffs or anything like that. Just kind of slid off into the side of the road with the bike on top of me. pretty much anything that ended in CL in my left leg was ripped or torn. I ended up breaking my leg as well. So it was a very unglorious first attempt at Pikes Peak. And I had to get carted out of there in an ambulance, and kind of went home with our tail between our legs. You know, I was back at home, and I was kind of unpacking. This is a couple weeks later after I had surgery. You know, the surgeon said, you know, this kind of injury is going to take at least a year before you're walking right again. And I was going like, you know, back when I was younger, you know, this is probably 3-4 months will be okay. And he was right. It took pretty much a whole year, and it actually took about 2 years before I got full movement and was able to run and stuff like that again. Yeah, cutting back to a couple weeks after the accident, I'm kind of going through my stuff. I had my leathers that they had to cut off, and I was going through there. And in the pocket of the leathers, I had a $5 bill that I had put up there. Because one of the competitors at Pikes Peak told me, they go like, hey, when you make it to the top, a lot of times there'll be delays and stuff like that. So you could get stuck at the summit of Pikes Peak for hours and hours and hours. So make sure you take a little bit of money, and like you can buy donuts up there and all that stuff. So that was my $5 for the donuts, and it just did something to me at that point, saying I gotta complete this. I gotta go back next year and try again. So that was kind of the impetus to attempt it again in 2013. So in 2013 we went back with a different bike. We went back with a Buell 1125 CR, and Buell was awesome. They really helped us out, you know, modifying the bike. The air is so thin up there that you can get away with super high compression ratios. So we were running almost 16-to-1 compression ratio. The bike was set up to the point where you couldn't even start it at sea level. It was designed to run, you know, at altitude, and it was a really great bike, really fun to ride. So we went out there again, and kind of the same process. I was just extremely nervous though the whole time, because I knew from the year before how easy it was to make just a very, very small mistake. And I felt that I was super lucky, just because if that mistake had happened at almost any other corner, it could have been a lot worse than it actually was. So I kind of went in there with a different attitude than the first year. The second year I went there, I said, I don't care if I'm last, I just want to make it to the summit. Then it came to the morning of the start. They decided to move our class to the very first group of motorcycles that would run up the Pikes Peak. So that was like at 8 o'clock in the morning. It was a very overcast day and very cool. So it was only 40, 45, 50 degrees at the start line at 9,000 feet. And it was only in the 30s at the finish line. So when the temperature is that cold and there's no sun load on the road, the motorcycle tires just don't grip very well. So the bike was going to be moving around, and I knew that. I knew I had to be a little bit conservative. You start, you know, based on your qualifying. So I started 5th, got the start flag, bike was running awesome, was slicing through the bottom section, felt pretty good. And, you know, came around one of the fastest straights where we do about 130, 140 miles an hour in this straight. And, you know, I saw 2 of my competitors were off in the ditch at the end of the straight. So I knew that the grip on the track wasn't what it could be with sun load. So I kind of backed off a little bit. And the very next corner was Engineer's Corner, where I'd crashed the year before. And so I actually rode it pretty hard because I wanted to prove to myself that I could get through there. Got through that corner, and it was just a huge relief off my shoulders. I was going further than I did the year before, so that was in itself was a win of sorts. And made it through that corner, and then 2 corners later, same sort of thing. I was like crossing over the center line, the yellow center lines, and the front end of the bike started tucking, and it was like in slow motion. I'm like, man, I can't believe this. I'm freaking crashing again. It was a very fast corner though, so I was already had my knee on the ground, and the bike just kind of slowly folded. But the way that the corner arced around, I never went off the track. I was like, when I stopped sliding with the bike, I was in the middle of the course still, and the bike was pointed the other way. But I was able to pick up the bike, turn it around, and get back on the bike and continue up. You know, the rest of the course was a blur. I mean, there's some really sketchy sections up near the top where, you know, there's just blue sky on one side and raw cliff on the other. There's one section near the top where you're doing almost 100 miles an hour headed towards a curve, and there's a boulder the size of a house 3 feet off the track, and you're running right at it, so I kind of took a conservative approach to it, but it ended up making it to the finish line. And crossing that finish line was just, I can't even describe the emotion. Makes me kind of emotional now, even think about it. To finally be able to get to the top of Pikes Peak. Other competitors had problems. It was a difficult race for sure. And then to stand on the podium, and unfortunately, the two guys I was standing on the podium with, within 5 years, both of them had been killed at Pikes Peak riding motorcycles, and that was a huge wake-up call for me. It was definitely a bucket list item, but just the danger involved in that, and that course is so dangerous with a motorcycle that I told myself I wasn't going to go back at that point. No, I feel lucky to have done it and escaped serious injury. And it's something that I'm super proud of. We had an awesome team, great support and great bikes, and it's something I'll never forget. But like if my son or daughter ever told me they're going to do Pikes Peak, I would do everything I could to talk them out of it. And motorcycles they removed the motorcycle classes just because of the serious injuries that were occurring out there. Being a motorcyclist and having had such a great experience at that race, that I'm kind of torn on that. I'm happy that we were able to do it, and it was cool that motorcycles were running there, but I could see their point as well, the motorcycle class going away. So if it was just a moment in history, we were able to accomplish that, and I could live with that. So.